Hi, my name is Brian, and I'm happy that you're here because this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. I've been making music for over a dozen years, about 13 now, and I've never done like a breakdown of any of my music, I don't think. Not that I can remember at least. And I'd like to do that. Let's scoot this down. So here's a song. It's not particularly huge, but it's sizable a little bit. So it'll take us a minute to go through. But I wanted to go through each of the elements in here and kind of a general idea of what the automation is doing, what effects are on, the different channels, and a general idea of what I did to create each of these sounds, because most of them, as you'll see, are samples. They're not MIDI like here. There's not that much MIDI in a lot of my music. It's usually, well, there's some, but it's usually a lot of samples that I've done. So let's just kind of get started. The whole reason I'm doing this, one, is because it's fun, and two, over the years, this hasn't happened a lot, but most of the time when a friend or a family member discovers, that I make music and hears it for the first time, they're often full of questions of like, how did you even make that? And I've been meaning, like I said, I've been meaning to make a video like this for a very long time. And now I'm just getting to it because I'm just in the mood to actually do it right now. So let's get going. We're not going to listen to the whole song here. This song actually is not released yet. It probably won't be for a couple of years. I don't want to get on into a tangent, but essentially, in very short summary, I will write novels and then create soundtracks for the novels that help tell that story and help increase, immersion and kind of express the feelings that I have about the book or whatever, motifs, events, character themes, etc. are all also contained in the music as well, and it helps tell that story. And so all of the music on the album will get released at the same time with the book, and those projects take me a while. So this song won't see the light of public release, in terms of the actual song you can go listen to for a while, but we can hear, you'll probably get to hear most of it in bits and pieces here through this video. So we're going to listen to the first little bit of the song here and get an idea for what it's doing, and then we'll break it down. I'll do that kind of section by section. All right, so you can kind of probably get a sense for the drama and the mixture of synthetic, like cybernetic synthetic, and also like kind of natural texture, and that is exactly what I'm going for in most of my music. And it's very inspired and influenced by what is happening in the novel, where the novel this is part of the soundtrack for is very heavily built around the idea of nature versus synthetic existence, and sometimes the fusion of the two. So here, and also that is inspired and informed by my love of field recording. If you don't know what field recording is, you can look that up. I'm not going to go on a tangent going through it right now, but I love doing that, and it also forms the basis for a lot of my sound design, including this right here. So we'll solo this, and this is just a little different part of it. And that is pretty much the same all through up until here. The reason that there is this little line of automation is that is controlling, where are we? Right here. That is controlling this. So if we close that, we'll take a look. It's going to move this up. Watch that. Right there. So now that is cutting out the very low end frequencies, which we no longer need for a while during pretty much the rest of the song. But during this very beginning, I wanted the low end presence in the frequency spectrum of these elements here. But again, later we don't need them because other elements are having space in the low end spectrum, so we don't need it here, and also it reduces any sort of mud or confliction of those low frequencies. And what this is actually, if we open this back up, this whole sound essentially, and I'll stop it, we don't need to listen to the whole thing again, but what was it, 2023? My girlfriend and I went on a trip to Moab in Canyonlands, Arches National Park, in Canyonlands, and we did a bunch of field recording. And down there is Navajo sandstone. And yeah, I guess you will hear me talk quite a bit about field recording in this video because it's a huge part of all of this. So down there's Navajo sandstone, and there is juniper wood in the form of trees, and they sound incredible when you tumble those around. We also got a lot of wind down there, which isn't present in this song, but tumbling wood and tumbling rocks, depending on what their form is, and what they're tumbling against and how they're tumbling, are so variant and so beautiful. Tumbling around a stone, decent sized, of like a sandy Navajo sandstone rock is beautiful. The cloppiness and the tone and the texture that it has as it rolls around, particularly on other, a flat or a bumpy or any sort of other sandstone material that's rolling, a surface that's rolling on. It sounds just beautiful. Additionally, a dried, dead piece of wood that's of a certain size or larger has a great tone. I don't really like to tumble sticks around. It's just a bunch of high frequency little tinkles. But if you have like a stick, it's a decent stick, and you tumble that around on basically anything, that's going to have obviously its own tone, and it's going to have its own tone per log. It's going to have its own tone per rock. All of these things are, you might look at it and think that's just a piece of wood, or that's just like a rock, but they all sound a little different. And you can tell, you can look after a certain point at a material and kind of imagine, based on experience, what that's going to sound like. And so you can, you're on a hike, or I'm in Moab or wherever else, and I look around and I see a particular rock or a particular stick of wood in a condition of some, usually being dried and dead wood. And I think that's going to sound good, so we go over to it and we tumble it around and record it. And there's a lot that goes into that. But that's as far as I'll go for now. But essentially, this is a very modified version of a recording of tumbling some of that Navajo sandstone around. It's got a heavy reverb on it from a plugin called Black Hole, which I'm sure we'll see on one of these track inserts here soon. And it's also had some frequency shifting and multi-band granular resynthesis happening to it. I don't know exactly what that looks like because it's rendered. I don't have those plugins open right in front of me to look at the settings of what they did, but that is the general idea of what happened to it. In order to create this scraping, natural, deep sound that's reverbing in a really beautiful way. And when I record that out, which that's the only way to do it, I'm out there in a recording situation, and then I have a WAV file to start and end with. So there was never any MIDI for this, right? There's never notes of this playing. It's just a recording from start to finish. But the way that is nice, especially when I do effects on it, like reverb and other things, and then I render it out again, now we can easily control how that reverb like ebbs and flows, how it breathes. And this is a nice way to do that. The way that I've this is the volume right here. So this is a very nice way I can control the breathing, essentially, of the atmosphere of a song, which is a huge part of a lot of what I do. And then let's move down here to this line. This is something that I made, let's see, I think this is wood. I think this started out as wood tumbling around, and then this is heavily impacted by the granular resynthesis that I mentioned. That is primarily what's happening to it. And it is, so I'm debating on how in depth I want to get, but essentially granular resynthesis breaks up an audio file into a bunch of little grains, so to speak, and then it does things to each of those grains according to whatever you set. And so each one can be delayed a little bit, each one can kind of scoot around. It's a variety of things that can happen there. And it can end up with very textural sounds like this. So right here, I've just cut and scooted around in this audio file. If I place this here, I'll show you. The whole audio file is a bit longer than any of where it's showing up in the song. And so I've just taken, you know, snippets of a window of this long audio file and chosen pieces that I want, right? Anyways, so we're just adding texture and transition there. Same thing with right here. And a lot of this doesn't sound like, whoa, you know, on its own. But it adds up. And we have pretty much the same things here. And move over here. Oops. Anyways, so that does actually add a lot. As you're listening to the song, it becomes present. And I don't think, let's see. There's just stereo shaping that's happening here. So that's it. And then we also have down here, and this is another element of what I did after the Moab trip. This is rock recordings that were, again, had similar effects as I've already talked about applied to it. And there's like a piece that would play, and then I'd space it out and have the reverb go, and then another piece that would play. Like you can kind of see here. So it just created for a lot of opportunities to split, like you've seen me do already, with kind of selecting a window of a longer field or a longer file, and taking just a little bit of it that fits what I want to do right there. And the same thing has happened here and pretty much everywhere else, as well as right here. We heard those reverb tails going. That's what these are, and they're fading in with the volume, and they're just adding texture and space. Let's get texture in these shorter bits, and then space in these longer ones. And then we have right here, this is a snare that I don't remember where it came from, but I like it. That's really kind of all I have to say about that, other than the processing that's happening on it. We have a little bit of EQing right there, just to, you know, this is what it'll sound like without the EQ. Not hugely different, but all of those little details line up to be exactly what it needs. We have a little bit of multi-band stereo shaping here with Maximus, as well as compression on each of the bands of frequency spectrum. We also have some transient shaping, which the transient is essentially the click impact essentially of a piece of percussion that doesn't have tonality to it. So if I were to increase this all the way, it would be a very like kind of hard hitting sharp thing if I were to turn it down all the way. And if I were to turn it up all the way. See, so, and the sustain is how long that happens if I turn this back all the way. And if I turn it up all the way, it really kind of exacerbates it, for lack of a better term, and then gain is how much that applies. I don't want to, again, we're not going to keep going into this level of technical detail, but now you know when I see transient master, it's doing something along those lines later. This is reverb. If I turn off the reverb, it actually doesn't sound that great. But if I turn the reverb on, it really fills that out, because this is a very small reverb, as if you were in like a tiled bathroom or something, or a small drum room, very small drum room. You can set the reflections and how those work. This one has a decay of 0.63 seconds, meaning the how long that tail goes. So the decay on the reverb for when we were doing something like, where were we? For these ones here, those are going to be like 8-10 seconds, you know, because that was a big part of what I wanted to do here. These I wanted to sound very tight, but it still fills it out, and that is very nice. Here we have, and it also has a little bit of automation. So these are, and I'll show you context at large in a second here. This is a very pitched down version of this. Well, that is the pitched down version. Originally, it was this. And again, that is, as you'd probably expect at this point, wood tumbling around and being affected by reverb, frequency shifting, and granular resynthesis. So, and I pitch that down, and it ends up as a kind of a bass element. If we go back here, we have a lot going on here. We have some compression and some gate. Gate is essentially anything below this level of volume decibels in the recording and just completely cut it out, which is nice. And then we have some multi-band compression going on here again, transient master, which we've seen, and then TDR Nova is a EQ just like this one, except this is static. This is just going to be the shape of whatever I want. TDR Nova here, which is free, by the way, for all you music producers out there. This is a dynamic EQ. So anything that hits past the blue threshold here, it will move down and bring down. So this is very good for elements of recording where there might be a harsh frequency that you want to cut down at times, but you want it to react dynamically so that it pulls it down when it's needed. When that frequency area, when that frequency band from left to right here goes past a certain point in decibels, you want to cut it down so that it doesn't affect, the rest of the recording, rest of the file doesn't need, that dip in the frequency spectrum right there, but there's a certain moment that does, and so it reacts dynamically to that depending on how you set the threshold. So here's a little bit of that going on. Much more affected on this. As you can imagine, this is this is a sharper sound. A lot of that is due to how it's been stretched out. You can notice this is FR3 number 2 and this is FR3 number 3. This is actually a unique version. So if I take this is pitched down. If I take this, it's actually a different file. This is pitched up. So this is 2 octaves higher than this one, as you could hear that already. And therefore it's more susceptible to harsh frequencies in the higher register. So I've done this. I've cut out those frequencies, or I've attenuated those frequencies when needed, and that's the use of a dynamic EQ. So that's what that's doing, and that is just offering various textural and bass elements and this kind of fun stuff. And I've just, again, you can see I've cut out little windows of where I want these sounds. This is just repeating in a lot of different ways. Over here we also have this. And then this combines with other things, which we'll see soon. So we're having all these elements interact. They're bringing texture, they're bringing atmosphere, they're bringing elements of synthesis, like cybernetic, like I mentioned earlier, like vibes, and then also elements of natural existence. So now here, all of these automations apply to this. And this is controlling the presence of the reverb, so I'm able to control even more the breathing, essentially, of the reverb here. So this is a song. This is a sound that I don't remember how I made. I know it involved the granular resynthesis and a field recording to begin with, but I don't know anything else, because I do know that I made this in 2017. So I don't remember what I did with that. Sorry. For the stereo separation, this is just making, let's see. This is controlling this right here. So when it's fully purple on the right, that is fully merged, so it'll be mono in the middle of your head if you have stereo headphones on, and then orange here, or red, or however you want to see that, is fully separated. And so it's moving it from fully mono to fully separated here, which we will see if we go there and bring this back up. Now it's there. So that's all that's doing, and this is the reverb, and this is the volume. We just wanted to move it down just a little bit right there, and it's the same sound right there. We have nothing here. This is automation, which we don't really need to look at right here yet. And then we also, let's get down to our next thing here. This is important. So this is a simple bass, and this is just I don't even know what to say about it. It's just a simple little bass note, and that's kind of it. And I rendered it out, and then this one is made unique. So now it's got a little bit of a tonality to it because of how I stretched out a little bit. And this right here, let me show you this real quick. So that automation right there, that green automation, is controlling which frequencies are allowed to play during that, to give it kind of like a woo feel, to give it more of a woomph if that makes sense. That's a very descriptive word, but I think you know what I mean. Right here, very small sound. All it is doing is just helping lead into each of these. So that's very small. And then we also have a snare here. That only happens sometimes. Notice we have our other snares here. Anyways, and that snare, let's take a look at it. Transient shaping, compression, and stereo shaping, and then also EQing happening before all of that. Let's see, I don't know where the snare is from. I think this is from an Audica sample pack. And then let's go here, take a look at this. This is in a different section of the song where we don't need a heavy snare. So this is from the MethLab snare sample pack from like 2016 or something like that. I still use that sometimes. I love it. There's some good snares in there. And that's just one of those. It's very simple, and that's all it needs to be. If we go to bass 4 here, we got a little bit of automation. Just more basses. Where is this from? Audica sample pack, very good. And then this is just putting it in line with the snare. So there's not like too much going on right there. This is called side chaining, but it's manual. A lot of times when people talk about side chaining, they will do something with the compressor where it's, you know, the tracks in the mixer will be linked to a track with a compressor on it that is set in sidechain mode and blah, blah, blah. Very cool. I like to do it manually. I know it's very tedious. A lot of people say probably that is like the wrong way to do it, but I kind of don't care because I like how this ends up. I like to be able to manually do all of that. So that's what I'm doing there. Bass 5 here we'll take a look at. This is from Belane's Discord. People will post sound design that they've done there. And I was in a call one time playing Minecraft, and I just felt like I was going to join. Belane was streaming in Discord in his channel, and there's a couple guys in there talking about whatever. And I was like, you know what? I just joined the server. I'm going to join and like hang out. I don't even have a microphone. I'm just going to listen. And they were posting, you know, Belane and others were posting their sound design as they were doing it. And I totally downloaded all of what they posted, and this is one of those. There's some good stuff in there, and it's very nice to use little snippets of it. So, and let's look at right here. There's not a whole lot going on with it. It was already very processed, and so I'm just cutting out a little bit of mid frequencies there, which is for those of you who like to make or listen to neuro, drum and bass, and similar things. That this is actually a huge element of that. And then again, compression and stereo shaping. Here, bass 6. This is so very interesting. This is like another one of those elements that just kind of blends in with the rest and helps create a larger whole. All of these are, really. Now this is, well, I guess you can imagine now what this originated as. It was Tumbling Wood. So this is a long recording of Tumbling Wood that I have affected in ways that I've mentioned already for my field recordings to create textural atmospheres. And it also has reverb on it in the recording, in the file, and on the file, if that makes sense. So when I took that original Wood recording and rendered it into this, there's reverb in this, but there is also reverb on this in the context of the song. And this is the Black Hole plugin that I was talking about earlier. This is a very cool reverb plugin, so it adds reverb. If we turn this off, but then it cuts off right there. And I didn't really want it to do that. So there's reverb in there, like I said, but now when this audio file stops, the reverb keeps going in the song and not just completely contained within here, which there's times when you want that and times when you don't. And this is a time when I wanted that. And this kind of underwater-ish feeling is large part happening because of the type of granular resynthesis that I did on that originally. Same with this. This is another stretched out thing. I don't... this is from Belane's Discord as well. I was like, where did I get that? And then we have these as well. We'll come here. So this is rocks tumbling around and having the mentioned effects applied to them. There's a lot of that. So this has some reverb on it, and the way that I've done that, it's not directly here in the channel strip, as you can see, or in the effects rack, but it is routing over to this reverb send, which has reverb on it. So anytime I want this reverb on anything, I can just route that, and I can affect how much that applies, which is a very easy way to just like hook things up to the same reverb, to put them in the same room or the same space, so to speak. But some things I want on their own, like the element with black hole on it earlier. This one, I was just like, that reverb is fine. So this is a sample from Splice. And this is just a reverby synth chord in B minor, and that's all it is. It's adds a large part of the atmosphere of the song, though. We also have this. This is an 808, just tuned to the key of our song, and it's saturated as well. Saturation is, well, I'm not going to explain it too much, but essentially it's taking, let's look at this really quick. EQ'd down, but see these peaks and how that's the actual, obviously, the content of the sound. We can think of this as a spectrogram in this case. This is after the saturation is being applied. We're adding all these harmonics, essentially, to the sound, to where the harmonic content is filled in. The missing gaps are filled in with existing content. It's kind of extrapolating what should be there if it were fuller of a sound, and then putting those in. Saturation is a very cool thing. And this is a nice, I think it was free plugin. Soft tube saturation, one knob, great stuff. We also have this. And this is something I remember. Something that I'll do is if there's an element of a song that I've created that I really like, I will render that out as its own sample and then potentially use it later. So this sound is like from a song that I can't remember if it ever went out or not, about 8 years ago. I think something like that. I did a lot of stuff around 2017, 2018, and some of that I still use, and this is one of those. I don't remember how it originated, so I'm sorry to not have much information on that. This is water. This is literally just water. So what's happening here, obviously we've got some EQing, cutting off the low end, and then some widening with Ozone Imager there. And then this is automation of the volume so that it moves in time and flow with the song. This is probably one of my favorite recordings of water that I've ever done, and also a testament to the idea that recording the same thing, so to speak, over and over again seriously yields different results. I have recorded so many streams and brooks and babbling creeks and everything, pieces of water other than strong flowing water, because that's just white noise, and it's always different. It's water, but each one has its own unique traits and qualities, and this is some of the slappiest water I think that I've ever recorded, and I've gotten quite a few at this point, plenty of recordings of water that I'm just so happy with. Field recording is just really its own art, and I'm really happy to be able to, have found a way to incorporate field recording into music. So this adds texture as well as, again, it breathes with the song. That's a huge part of a lot of my music, but especially this song. Then we have right here some automation on this synth as well. We'll actually be able to take a look at this pretty deeply. So there's nothing right here. This is the volume, so it's very quiet right now, basically nothing. Now you can start hearing it. So those are the notes that it's playing, and let's see if we can bring up the synth. This is Serum. I have yet to upgrade to Serum 2, which I will be doing soon. So this is actually like a preset, a factory preset that I don't remember if I modified at all or not, but it kind of doesn't matter because this is a thing. This is a whole tangent, but if something sounds good, just do it. You'll probably notice there's a lot of I guess not in this song, there's not a lot of samples, but there's some samples that are from other people, and I didn't have any hand in creating. I've done some effects on them, sometimes very simple ones, but I've just used them. There's a snare, there's a couple basses. Most of what we've gotten here so far are like field recordings that I've done. But we have run into this splice sample, and I think this is a splice 808 from a sample pack on there, and that's fine. And this is a preset from stock Serum, which is fine. I think, and I say this because I used to be this way. People get really anal sometimes about like everything that should, is in your song should be from you completely. And there's a whole argument about that that's long running. I think people are starting to chill out about it in the past couple of years, because a lot of us that started making music in the 2010s have gotten older and busier lives now, where we don't have the amount of time to make everything from scratch anymore. I have obviously some time to make some stuff from scratch, but then those will be like most of the field recordings, the affected field recordings that are in this song are from kind of one large, 2-week session, basically at the end of 2023, where I just rendered out and created a bunch of effects on field recordings I had just done, and created a fairly extensive library of those types of sounds. And then I use them, and I'll do that periodically. I'll just do a while where I'm just doing some sound design. I'll render those out, and then I'll just use those. And in day-to-day music production, which for me, very busy, definitely not day-to-day, it's whenever I can get to it, I use those. And a lot of my music making, the actual production process, is dragging in these samples that I have, whether they're from me or anybody else, and it doesn't matter to me anymore. 2016, 17, when I was like obsessed with this, and I still am, but I had the time to be obsessed with every element of it, in terms of I was against the idea of using samples and presets and anything from anybody else. Everything had to be just me, and that doesn't work. You can't prop yourself up completely on your own, unless you have like infinite time, which who does? So that is kind of the thing there, is whatever sounds good, just use it. Here's a breath. This is from a Dune inspired sample pack. I have a lot to say about that. So this is on the same track as one of the other field recordings. So we've already seen the black hole and the imager here, and this is also pitched up in terms of being stretched. So it's stretched to be shorter, and due to how I've got the resampling mode, that also pitches up. Here's a kick, and all of these lines of automation here are manual automation of sidechaining for different elements that need it. So whenever this kick happens, other elements are ducking down to make room for that kick. And this is another kick from the Audica sample pack. Over here, we have strings. It gets very quiet, or it starts very quiet. And this is Spitfire. And then we have a little bit more strings coming in. And these are the Joshua Bell violin from Embertone. So here we have some other elements that are coming into play, and this is where it starts to really like come together in terms of the musicality. So right here, this is another vocal from the Dune sample pack, and then also here is just a low choir, male choir. So those all combine to create that. And we also have this simple bass right here, which we will solo. simple bass, just an arp on one note, no chord. And that is all it's doing. Come down here. And this is something I made with Synplant. I'm not going to go into Synplant, but essentially it is a resynthesizer in various ways, and I used some field recordings in there, and I ended up with this. We already went over the vocal there and the vocal here. And lastly, this is a nave flute, which East West Raw and Silk have a lot of good stuff along those lines. So yeah, that's the breakdown of every element of this song. I hope that was interesting. Play you a little sneak preview, I guess, of kind of the combination of a lot of what we've been listening to. Anyways, so you can kind of get the idea of the vibe of this song, where maybe it's a little disappointing I didn't play the whole thing. I don't know. It feels facetious to play a song while I sit here and look at the camera, and I'm like, I hope you enjoyed that. It just feels weird. So there's some there's heavy elements of, you know, the breathing and the atmosphere and the texture, and again the combination of cybernetic and natural existence. There's water. So there's that. You can hear, I think, especially now that we've gone through all of these elements, you can probably hear each individual element a little bit more clearly than you would if you were just hearing the song. And you're able to like distinguish a little bit more just for fun. It's not necessary to enjoy the song, I don't think, but it's kind of, I think it'd be kind of fun to see, you know, each element and what role it's playing. And now all of these little granular elements come together to create a larger whole of a very atmospheric and textural experience. So I hope you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun making this, and I was just kind of going over stuff that I did. Let me know if you want me to go over any other songs I made. Some of them I probably won't be able to because the project files are lost because they're years old, or corrupted, or I got files in different places, you know, can't pull the samples and stuff like that. But if this goes well, if people are like, oh yeah, this is fun and insightful, I don't know, then maybe I'll make another one for another recent song of mine. Thank you for sticking here. I'm not going to ask you to like and subscribe, but have a good day.